Sit down, take a deep breath, open your heart and listen carefully. Because today I am about to tell you a story that will shock you first, then break you slowly, and finally teach you something you will never forget. This is not fiction. This is the kind of story that is happening right now inside many homes across this country. Homes where a man smiles in public like a saint, but rot in private like a sinner. Homes where a woman gives her entire heart to a man who is quietly splitting that heart in two. It is the story of a young man who spent his entire life running away from his own shadow. A man who was ashamed of the very ground his mother used to sweep. A man who built a fake life so carefully that even the woman lying next to him did not know the truth. And it is about the moment that fake life finally collapsed in front of everyone who mattered most. If this channel has ever given you a reason to pause and breathe again, kindly subscribe, tap that like button, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life your small action might touch. Now let me take you back to a small village in Imo State, where a young boy once stood outside a neighbor's compound, staring at the children eating rice and chicken, while he swallowed his own saliva and walked away quietly. His name is Obinna, but in his village, people called him Obi. He was the second child of Mama Chidinma and Papa Chuka, a struggling family who lived in a small rented room at the edge of Eziyama village. Papa Chuka was a night watchman at a warehouse in the next town. He earned barely enough to feed the family, and on some months, even that was not guaranteed. Mama Chidinma woke up before dawn every morning to fry akara and bean cakes at the junction, where she sold them to passers-by and motorcycle riders. She raised Obi and his elder sister Amara with hands that some mornings trembled from exhaustion. Obi grew up watching his mother suffer in the most silent ways. He watched her cook for the children first and eat last. He watched her patch torn clothes until they could no longer be patched. He watched her smile at customers, even on days when her own stomach was empty. But instead of these scenes filling him with pride, they filled him with shame. Why? Because the other children in the village wore new uniforms to school. They came to class with shiny backpacks. Their parents drove them to town. And Obi? Obi wore the same 2 shirts his mother had sewn and unstitched 3 times. He carried a torn bag made from old rice sacks. He walked barefoot to school on some days because his only pair of sandals had broken and his mother could not afford another one. Other children mocked him. They called him Akara boy. They called him the son of the woman who sells by the road. They laughed when he begged his mother for lunch money. They whispered that he would never amount to anything. And each time those words landed on his young ears, something quiet brewed inside his chest. A small, stubborn fire. Not the fire of a boy who wanted to work hard. Not the fire of a boy who wanted to make his mother proud. But the fire of a boy who wanted to escape. Escape his village, escape his mother, escape the dirt, escape the shame. One afternoon, Obi came home from school and saw a small envelope on the table. Inside was a school fees receipt. Mama Chidinma had managed to pay for the first term of his final year in primary school. The receipt had a small stain of oil on it, likely from her hands, which had been frying akara that very morning. Obi stared at the receipt and felt something he could not name. Was it gratitude? Was it love? No, it was shame. Shame that his mother's hard-won money was paying for his education while she ate nothing that night. Shame that the receipt had to be paid by hands that smelled of vegetable oil. He walked into the kitchen without greeting her. He dropped his bag on the floor. Mama Chidinma turned around with a tired smile on her face. "Odim, welcome back." He said nothing. He took cold Gary from the cold pot, poured it into a bowl, added cold water, and walked back into the room without even tasting it. That night, tears rolled down Mama Chidinma's cheeks quietly. She did not understand why her son, the child she had bled for, the child she had carried through rain and hunger, was becoming so cold to her. But Obinna was already building walls in his heart. Walls to keep the village out. Walls to keep his past out. Walls to keep his mother's love out. Because to him, his mother's love was a reminder of everything he was running from. By the time Obinna reached secondary school, he had made one decision. He would leave the village. He would go to Lagos, become rich, and never return as the Akara boy. No one would ever know where he came from. No one would ever speak about his mother again. He studied hard, not because he loved knowledge, but because books were the only bridge he could see to the other side. By God's grace, he finished secondary school with a result good enough to win a small scholarship. But it was not enough to pay for university. Mama Chidinma sold everything she had. She sold her deep freezer. She sold 2 plots of land that Papa Chuka's father had left behind. She borrowed from neighbors and reluctantly from a loan shark. And she sent Obinna to Lagos. Before he left, she hugged him tightly and pressed something into his hand. A small Bible verse written on a piece of paper. Proverbs 17:1. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. Obinna smiled politely, but he shoved the paper into the bottom of his bag without reading it. He had made his own plans. He had his own dream. And his mother's prayers were not part of it. When Obinna arrived in Lagos, the city swallowed him whole first. He got cheated on rent. He got cheated on transportation. He got cheated on small contracts. He was refused jobs because he had no connections. He slept on the floor of a friend's 1-room apartment for 6 months. But Obinna had one dangerous weapon inside himself: pride. And pride, as they say, was his greatest strength and his eventual destruction. He refused to go home, even when he had no food, even when his mother sent small amounts via a bus driver, even when his sister Amara begged him to come back. He refused. Slowly, Obinna began climbing. He learned tailoring. He opened a small shop, then moved to selling fabrics. Then he met a man who introduced him to oil and gas supplies. Then the money started coming, slowly, then heavily. Within 4 years, Obinna's life had completely changed. He drove a fairly used Toyota Camry. He rented a flat in Lekki. He wore suits. He smelled of expensive perfume. He took pictures with important people. But one thing never changed: his shame about his past. When colleagues asked him about his father's occupation, he would lie. "My father was a civil servant." When someone asked where his mother lived, he would say vaguely, "She travels a lot." When someone mentioned Imo State, he suddenly became uninterested in the conversation. He did not hate his mother, but he hated the memory of her. He hated the Akara smoke. He hated the broken sandals. He hated the stained receipts. He wanted them all buried, like a grave without a stone. At a friend's wedding in Lagos, Obinna saw a young woman who made him stop breathing for a moment. Her name was Nneka. She was humble in the way most dangerous women are humble. She did not know she was beautiful. She did not know her laughter could melt a room, and she did not know her quiet grace could hold a man's entire future in her hands. Nneka had grown up in a small town in Imo State. Her mother sold vegetables. Her father was a junior secondary school teacher. They were honest, hard-working people who lived simply but thanked God daily. Nneka wore a simple gown at the wedding, no heavy makeup, no exaggerated jewelry. But something about her natural kindness drew Obinna like a magnet. He approached her with confidence. After introductions, she laughed softly when he asked her out. "You are too Lagos busy for me, Obinna," she joked. "I am a simple village girl." "And that is exactly why I want to know you better," he replied. She smiled again, and somewhere in that smile Obinna found the perfect cover for his own lie. Because here was a woman whose own background was humble. If he married Nneka, he could always say he came from a similar background. He would not have to invent rich parents who never visited. He would not have to fake a family tree. He could use her simplicity as a shield. He did not love Nneka for Nneka. He loved Nneka for what she could cover up for him. The courtship was beautiful on the surface. Obinna sent flowers, he sent gifts, he hired drivers to take her around, he took her to expensive restaurants. Nneka, who had never seen anything beyond Enugu's quiet markets, was overwhelmed. "You are too kind," she whispered once. "My father only drank raw Milo in his whole life." Obinna laughed. "That is exactly why I want to give you something better." But privately, Obinna was already constructing his fake life with surgical precision. He rented a bigger apartment in Victoria Island for 1 week and invited a few colleagues to a fake housewarming. He bought furniture he never used just to take photos. He hired a cook once and told colleagues she was our family's long-term house help, even though she only worked that single afternoon. He told colleagues that his mother was in the village managing a large palm oil business. He said his father was a retired community leader who rejected politics. He invented aunts and uncles, all living abroad in the United States. Nneka believed everything. Why wouldn't she? She had no reason to doubt the man who was giving her everything she had never seen before. By the 3rd month, Obinna proposed. Nneka accepted with tears. She called her mother in Enugu excitedly. "Mama, the man who has been courting me has proposed. He is wealthy, he is kind, he is generous." Her mother wept with joy. "My daughter, has he taken you to his family? Has he taken you home?" Nneka paused. "Not yet, Mama." Something small, very small, stirred inside the older woman's mind, but she pushed it aside and rejoiced. She had no reason to suspect the man who was blessing her daughter. But there was another woman in Obinna's life, a young, glamorous woman from a proper Lagos business family. Her name was Uju. Uju had met Obinna at a business event. She was used to money. She was used to influence. She was the daughter of a property investor. When Obinna met Uju, he almost peed on himself with excitement. This was the Lagos woman he had always dreamed of. The woman who would validate his fake status. The woman who would make the world believe he was born into wealth. But Uju's family had standards. They asked questions. They asked about his parents. They asked about his village. They asked about his family compound. And Obinna panicked. He could not take Uju to his village. He could not introduce her to Papa Chuka, who was still a night watchman. He could not introduce her to Mama Chidinma, who still sold Akara at the junction. He could not introduce her to the small rented room where he once ate Gary with cold water. So he lied more. He told Uju his father was a former soldier who died when he was young. He told her his mother had relocated to a small town in Anambra where she lived quietly. He said he had no close village family, just distant relatives overseas who were wealthy enough not to bother with village ceremonies. Uju believed him too, but she became his pressure. She wanted marriage. She wanted commitment. She wanted to be the only woman. And Obinna, who was living 2 parallel lives, finally made the cruelest decision any man can ever make. He went back to Nneka and said, "Let us do a small wedding quickly, quietly, just a court marriage and a small reception. My parents are old and don't like big ceremonies." Nneka's mother was confused. "But Obinna, what about the introduction? What about the traditional rites?" "Our people will not accept that, my son." Obinna smiled gently. "Mama, trust me. We will do all of that quietly after the wedding. My family prefers small private events." The older woman nodded reluctantly. Her daughter was happy, and she did not want to ruin the joy. They did a small court wedding in Lagos. Obinna wore an expensive suit. Nneka wore a simple but elegant gown. His uncle abroad attended, but it was actually his sister's friend, paid to play the role. His family sent a gift from overseas, but the gift was actually shipped by Obinna himself. When Nneka's parents asked for photos of Obinna's family, he showed them carefully edited pictures he had pulled from random Google searches. Mama Chidinma was in none of them. Papa Chuka was in none of them. The small compound where Obinna grew up was nowhere in his story. Papa Chuka, who still worked night shifts at the warehouse, did not even know his son had gotten married. Mama Chidinma only learned through Uju's bitter surveillance. One afternoon, while Neka was cooking in the kitchen, Obinna's phone rang. It was his elder sister Amara calling from the village. Obinna stepped out of the room quickly. "Obi, why have you not told Mama about your wedding? She saw it on Facebook through your cousin Chisom. She is hurt. She is crying." Obinna sighed. "I was going to call them, but you know how Mama is. She will start asking questions. She will want to come. She will embarrass me in front of my wife's family." Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke slowly. "Obi, you are not ashamed of where you come from. You are ashamed of who you have become. And you will pay for that shame. Mark my words." Obinna laughed carelessly. "Relax, Amara. I am doing everything for the good of this family." But the truth was different. Everything Obinna was doing was for the good of his own false image. 1 month after wedding Neka quietly, Obinna returned to Uju's apartment in Ikoyi. He had not told her about the wedding. He told her he needed space for business reasons, but Uju was sharp. After several months of excuses, she grew suspicious. She hired a private investigator. 3 days later, the truth was handed to her on a printed paper. Uju opened it. Inside were photographs from Obinna's courthouse wedding. Inside were his marriage certificate. Inside were photos of Neka in the gown, smiling beside him. Uju sat frozen in her apartment. The man she had thought would marry her had married someone else quietly. Another woman. A woman who was already sleeping in his house, cooking his food, and trusting him fully. Her anger was not only about betrayal, it was about embarrassment. How would she explain this to her father? How would she explain this to her friends? How would she explain this to herself? She made a phone call that night. "Obinna," she said calmly, "we need to talk." "Where?" he asked nervously. "In your house, in front of your wife." Obinna's legs weakened. "Uju, please, don't do this." "Tomorrow, 5 p.m., she said flatly, and ended the call. The following afternoon, Uju arrived at Obinna's house. Neka opened the door, smiling politely. "Good afternoon. Please come in." Uju entered slowly. She sat down on the sofa, kept her bag on her lap, and waited for Obinna to come out of the bedroom. When he appeared, his face was pale. Neka looked confused. "Please sit down, my wife," Obinna whispered. Neka sat. Uju opened her bag, pulled out the wedding photos, and placed them on the table. "Explain this to her," Uju said calmly. "Explain who I am. Explain who she is. Explain who you really are." Obinna's mouth opened, but no words came out. Neka picked up the photographs slowly. Her hands trembled. Her eyes widened. She saw her husband standing at the altar with her. The same man Uju claimed was her man, too. "What is this?" Neka asked softly. Obinna swallowed hard. "Sit down, Neka. Let me explain." "Explain what?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Explain that I am the only one you have been lying to? Or explain that I am only one of many women?" Uju stood up calmly. "I came here for my own dignity. You will both decide what to do with him." She walked out and never came back. That night, Neka sat on the floor of their bedroom, her wedding gown still tucked in a suitcase nearby. Tears fell silently. She had trusted him completely. She had left her village for him. She had followed him without questions. Her parents had sacrificed their small savings for the wedding, and now she was discovering that the entire marriage was built on lies, inside lies. She did not scream. She did not break things. She simply sat there thinking about her mother, about her father, about the prayer Obi had skipped on his wedding day. She thought about the verse his mother had written on the piece of paper that he had buried at the bottom of his bag. "Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife." Quietly, she packed her things. She called her mother. "Mama, I'm coming home." Her mother heard the brokenness in her voice. "What happened, my daughter?" "I will tell you when I arrive." The next morning, Nneka was gone. Within weeks, Obinna's lies collapsed like a house of fire. Uju's family, furious at being deceived, blacklisted him from their business circles. His business partners, who had trusted him with multi-million naira deals, withdrew their investments because they could no longer trust his character. Within 3 months, his shop closed. His cars were repossessed. His Lekki apartment was taken back by the landlord, and in the middle of one very cold night, Obinna sat on his now empty balcony, staring at the city lights that suddenly seemed to mock him. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to hide behind. His wealth was gone. His fake family was gone. His wife was gone. The woman he thought loved him had only loved the image he built on lies. And in his loneliness, only one memory remained true. The memory of a mother who sold Akara so he could eat. The memory of a father who walked kilometers to work so he could sleep in a dry bed. He wept like a child. After months of searching for meaning, Obinna decided to do the hardest thing he had ever done in his adult life. He went home. He did not call ahead. He did not announce his arrival. He just walked into the small rented room where Mama Chidinma was still frying Akara at the stove. Mama Chidinma turned around slowly. Her hands, trembling with age now, stopped stirring the oil. She stared at her son as if looking at a ghost. "Obi? Is that you?" "Yes, Mama." She did not run to him. She did not throw herself into his arms. She simply looked at him. "Why are you here, my son?" Obinna fell to his knees on the cold floor, his expensive luggage rolling behind him. "Mama, I have nothing. I have lost everything. I have become the thing I ran from." Mama Chidinma set down her ladle slowly. She looked at the son she had bled for, the son she had sacrificed her land for, the son she had shared her only plate of food with. And slowly, she knelt with him. "My son," she whispered, "I never needed your money. I never needed your Lagos life. I only needed you to remember where your blood came from." That night, Papa Chuka came home from his shift to find his son eating Akara quietly beside his mother. The old man stopped halfway through the door. He did not speak, but tears gathered in his tired eyes. And slowly, Obinna sat at that small table, tasting Akara for the first time in years, and felt something he had never felt in his comfort-driven Lagos life. He felt peace. 6 months later, Obinna sat in Nneka's father's compound in Enugu. He had come with humility. No expensive car, no big words, no lies. Nneka was released from her room, and when she saw him, she was calm. He apologized sincerely. He confessed everything: the lie about his family, the shame of his parents, the second life with Uju, the fake wedding, and the deep reason behind all of it. "My father sold Akara," he whispered, "and I was ashamed. I was ashamed of the very woman who gave me life." Nneka's father listened quietly. Then he spoke with care. "My daughter, this man has humbled himself today. A proud man does not kneel. He has knelt. The decision is yours." Nneka looked at Obinna for a long moment. She remembered the Akara-stained receipt. She remembered the Bible verse. She remembered the verse his mother had written, verse she had found tucked inside an old book. "Proverbs 17:1, she said softly. Obinna's eyes widened. She had kept it. She had read it. It had spoken to her even when he ignored it. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife. She smiled faintly. I forgive you. But you must rebuild this home from the ground up. No lies, no fake status, no hidden women. If you can do that, come back to me. Obinna nodded. I will do it, Nneka. I swear on my mother's Akara. This time, Obinna did not run. This time, he returned. Slowly, honestly, patiently. He reconnected with Uju's family and settled the damage he had done to her image. He paid back the business partners he had betrayed. He apologized to colleagues he had lied to. He told the people of his village the exact truth he had hidden for years. And slowly, like a tree that had been cut down but given water again, Obinna began to grow differently. He started a small business with funding he had honestly saved. He involved his father and mother in the decision-making. He sent Nneka's parents a portion of the first profits, not as compensation, but as honor. And on the day he finally did the proper traditional marriage in Obinna's village, with Mama Chidinma openly selling Akara at the entrance of the venue, with Papa Chuka proudly wearing his old watchman uniform as the attending father, Nneka walked in with a smile so bright that even the sun could not compete. And as Obinna carried his mother in a tearful embrace at the ceremony, the people whispered about the boy who once ran away in shame, and the man who came home in humility. Years later, Obinna's children would grow up without shame about their grandparents. They would visit the village. They would sit beside Mama Chidinma while she fried her famous Akara on Sunday mornings. They would hug Papa Chuka after his night shifts ended. They would not know what fake identity meant, because their father had been honest with them from the very beginning. And Obinna himself would sometimes sit quietly on the same wooden bench where he had once sat as a hungry child, looking at other children eating rice. And he would weep, quietly, like a man who had finally understood that the ground he once despised was actually the foundation of everything he now enjoyed. He had run from his mother's hands and built a life with no roots. When the winds came, the whole life fell. He returned to his mother's hands, and that same ground held him again. So, if you are a young person running away from your family because of shame, stop. The very people you are running from are the ones who will hold you when life falls apart. If you are ashamed of your mother who sells by the road, who cooks by candle, who washes clothes by hand, be ashamed of your own ingratitude instead, because that woman is the ground you are standing on. And if you are a woman who has been lied to by a man who built a fake life on top of your trust, do not collapse. Stand up. Walk home if you must, but never let anyone trade your simplicity for their deception. You are worth more than a man who needs to lie to keep you. The greatest pride a man can wear is not the suit. It is the ability to kneel in front of his mother and say, I am sorry I forgot where I came from. Until next time, stay blessed, stay honest, and never be ashamed of the hands that fed you.